Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at gcnlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Dr. Shealy, are you blissed?
Of course. Just hearing you laugh makes me blissful.
Well, Dr. Oh, jeez. You know, I was thinking about a call I received yesterday after the broadcast. We have an instructor from Australia. Her name is Gwyneth Isaacs, and she lives off the grid, and she's with us on Tuesdays. And so she called me as a result of some of the things that we talked about on the broadcast, which was, you know, staying private and avoiding the cell phones and the tracking and so forth. And so during the conversation, it was, you know, maybe 5 minutes or so, I said, Gwyneth, I think I'm getting a little more grumpy. And did you notice that I'm getting a little more grumpy on the air? And she said, no, I wouldn't say it was grumpy. I would say you're adrenalized. And and so there's a medical reason why I brought this up. And I mentioned to you that I'm on the steroid prescription, and you've recommended that I take some supplements, and like your youth formula, which I take religiously, and the magnesium lotion and spray, which I use religiously, and also DHEA, 25 milligrams per day. And so here's the story, Dr. Shealy. Now, there's a medical reason why I'm mentioning this. So on Monday, I had a dental checkup in Springfield, Missouri, and I thought, you know, I try to make my trips count. I thought I could go past the farm supply company that has the spare parts and so forth, and I bought 70 rake tines for a wheel rake for hay. And these they're about maybe 20 inches long, and they come in two sizes. So I bought the ones that I needed, and I used about 20 of them. And I thought, I've got another wheel that's a slightly different size. I'd like to exchange the ones I haven't used, the 50 that are still packed, for 50 of the other size, and they're the same price. They're $1.29 per piece. So 50 at $1.29. So I had about 10 minutes to spare on my travels to be on time for the dental appointment. So I pulled into the farm supply place, and everybody's like having a very leisurely time. And I'm thinking, but I really need to get in and get out of here and get these exchanged. So it's now my turn. I put them on the counter, and the guy says, "Okay, let me have your phone number." And he looks it up, and he says, "I can only exchange 30 of these." And I looked at him, and I said, "Well, why don't you look a little deeper, because the transactions are there. They're in your system, with my phone number attached to my account." And he says, 5 minutes goes by, and he goes, "I can only do 30 of them." And that's all it took for me to say, "That's ridiculous."
Hey, I think some of my attitude is contagious.
Well, I got to tell you that I was kind of surprised that I did that. Now, normally it would take maybe another 5 minutes. But so now everybody's looking at me, and this poor guy behind the counter is thinking, this is like a disaster waiting to happen. If he can't figure this out pretty soon, I'm probably going to ignite, and I'm going to be like the biggest problem they've had all week. And so finally, I suggested he dig a little deeper, and he goes, "Oh, yeah, here it is. I said, "Well, great." And so then we have to look up and make sure that the price is $1.29 for the old ones, the new ones. And it turned out to be just fine, and on my way I went. Now, the reason I'm mentioning this is I was pretty quick on the trigger for me. I mean, normally the result would have been the same, I would have made sure that I left there with what I wanted because my position was correct. Okay, so I get to the dental office and I'm going through the dental checkup and everything's going fine. There's this lawn mowing company outside the window and I can see the truck and the name on the truck and everything's good. And I go out to my car an hour later and my rear window on my 1996 Mercedes E300 diesel is shattered. I mean, absolutely in a million pieces. And when this thing breaks, it breaks into crumbles the size of a split pea. Literally, I'm not exaggerating. So there's glass all over the back seat, all over the trunk lid, and the window is shattered. And, of course, that's exactly the time when the lawn mowing guy was there. So our dentist is a USA Preparedness instructor, and he came out. He's like, wow, it's unbelievable. I was the last appointment. And so we're looking at the window, cleaning up the glass in the parking lot. And so we called the lawn company. Lawn company says, okay, we'll look into it. So he sends the owner of the company sends the guy who mowed out there. And the guy says, he's like denying it. And I said, look, the timing is right. The trajectory is from over there. Look, there are rocks over there that have been hit. Look, here is the chip. Here are the photos. And he's like hemming and hawing because he's thinking this is probably going to be an expensive thing. Well, my car was probably the only car in that part of the parking lot. Bottom line is he's dragging his feet and he doesn't want to do anything. But I get the phone numbers, and I called the company and left a message for them to call me, and they didn't call back. Next day, it was Tuesday. I was on the air after I got off the air. I called and I said, "Hey, I'm Vin Finelli, and I'm the guy with the windshield, and I'm getting a little bit anxious because I don't have a car." My car, I can't park it outside because it may rain and I don't have a back window. So would you please call me? I didn't get a call back. So I called again and then I said, I just would like this to be less expensive. And, it's $65 a day to rent a car and this can only get worse. Please call me. And so I decided to call the guy. That was the owner I left a message for. Didn't call me back. So I called the guy who actually did the damage, the guy who was on the mower. And he said, well, the boss doesn't think he's going to do anything about it. And that's all it took for me to go to launch. And I explained how it was going to go, what was going to happen, and how it was going to get so much worse in detail. It only took like a minute. Immediately, the owner called me back. And he decided that maybe he should own up to it, which he ultimately did. But the point, Dr. Shealy, is I'm on edge. These steroids have got me doing things faster than I normally would do. And when the state of Missouri attacked us with their financial revenue perverts and perversion, I launched when they threatened to put liens on our farm. I went crazy. I mean, I literally was angry, and I went after them. And by the way, I do have a letter in my hand. They backed down. And let me read this letter to you, and then I'd like to hear medically what you think about what has happened to me as a result of these steroids. So here's the letter from Missouri's Department of Revenue. I've read this twice. I want to read it one more time. I read it Monday and Tuesday, but regarding, and this is from the Missouri Department of Revenue, General Counsel's Office, Jefferson City, Missouri. It says, Ray, Vincent Finelli versus Director of Revenue and the case number. Dear Mr. Finelli, enclosed, please find a motion to dismiss your appeal with the Commission because the Department of Revenue has withdrawn the assessment issued to you. The Department of Revenue has withdrawn the assessment issued to you. Based on information received, the Department of Revenue now agrees you are not liable for the amounts assessed by the department in the assessments issued in October 2016. The department now agrees you are not liable for the amounts assessed. I apologize for the confusion and any inconvenience this matter may have caused you. The department has had limited information about your business activities, and because your business was not registered for sales tax with the department and had not filed sales tax returns, which is not true. Therefore, the department sought to confirm whether your business had any sales other than those that are exempt from tax under 144.815. I hope this satisfactorily resolves the matter. Please do not hesitate to contact me. And that's signed Stephen Sullivan, Senior Legal Counsel. What I'm saying is they agreed that we did not owe any sales tax, but they put us through the meat grinder. And when they did, and when they decided they were going to put a levy against our farm, I went crazy. I decided, okay, this is a no-holds-barred fight. And this is a fight that's serious, and I will prevail, and I will leave no stone unturned. And, normally it would take me a little longer to get to that point. Normally I would have been a little bit more polite. Normally, the reaction would have just taken a little bit longer. However, since I'm on these steroids, my response is way quicker, way more forceful. Do you think that that's normal, or what would you say, Dr. Shealy?
I think it's a normal reaction on steroids, yes.
Mm-hmm.
They really do ramp up your whole adrenaline response system.
Well, I got to tell you, it's at the right time. I'll tell you what, I will not allow our family to be attacked, unprovoked, unjustified, unwarranted. And, if we file our returns, according to their rules. But when they come out with these, accusations, unfounded, unsubstantiated, unprovable, makes me angry that I have to waste so much time. And I put them on notice publicly that any more consulting they need from me to help them understand what they're doing, it will cost them $1,000 an hour.
Well, Vince, I think we could boil it down to this, but you and I both probably have very similar feelings about government.
Oh, yeah.
The kindest thing I can say is it sucks.
Yeah.
The more intense is it's evil.
It's funny, Dr.
Lincoln, the plague goes on.
It's funny, Dr. Shealy, I was in the dentist chair, and the hygienist looked at me, and she said, you actually seem like a nice guy. So, I guess my reputation as an activist is something that maybe it's not quite accurate. I mean, I am an activist, but maybe I am a nice guy. We'll be right back. Last, Dr. Norman Shealy's with us, medical doctor, Surgeon of the Year, author of over 30 books, broadcaster, farmer, Native American medicine man, and so much more. Dr. Shealy, it's delightful to be broadcasting with you. How are you doing? How's Dr. Shealy?
Well, mentally, I'm doing great. Yeah, I still have a total numbness in the left foot, which is a nuisance, but I'm getting around.
Mm-hmm. Are you able to operate your vehicle?
Oh, yeah. Fortunately, it's the left foot.
Okay, great.
And, with most cars now, you just need the right foot for driving.
Okay. Very good, very good. And are you at your clinic during the week?
Well, I'm there at least one day and sometimes two. I'm not full-time yet, but I'm enough.
Great. And Dr. Soren is there?
Yes.
Great. Okay. So clinic is operational. Dr. Shealy is available. And are you available via telephone for consultations?
Oh, yeah. I do. Those are easy. I can do them anywhere.
Okay. And Dr. Shealy, should we want to contact you and set up an appointment for a consultation, what's the best way to do that?
351-5221. That's 417, of course, area code. 351-5221.
Okay. So if you'd like to set up an appointment to chat with Dr. Shealy, one-on-one, get some medical advice and counsel, 417-351-5221. 417-351-5221. That's the office number in Springfield, Missouri, Central Time. Dr. Shealy, on my list of things to talk about today, I'd like to just share them with you, and then maybe we can get into them. Brain tumors, irregular work hours, and erectile dysfunction, keeping busy to fight off Alzheimer's disease, male genital mutilation, which would be a circumcision, sauerkraut as a probiotic, B complex as a preventative after drinking too much alcohol to ameliorate the effects of hangovers or to prevent some of them. 3 meals a day versus grazing. The new trend is, for people who have these high-pressure jobs, sitting behind computers, typing on the keyboard. I guess that's what we do today. eating all day long rather than 3 meals a day. Apple cider vinegar, the use of apple cider vinegar to maintain better health. So those are some of the things that I've got on my list. Received a call from someone who's been on the air with us on the East Coast, and she told me that they have a family friend, and this family friend has a growth on her brain. Middle-aged gal, and it's between her eyes. And the medical opinion is it is not malignant. It's a tumor, but it's not malignant. If it grows, she'll probably lose her vision. If they treat it with radiation and they miss, she'll probably lose her vision. It's not operable. And we talked last week about this MRI type of a treatment that's available on the West Coast. Dr. Shealy, what do you do in a situation like this? Do you have any thoughts?
Well,
I mean, I didn't give you a lot of information because I don't have a lot.
It's interesting to me because it sounds to me as if it's a meningioma. And obviously, I haven't seen the films or whatever. Meningioma is like a warty tumor. It's benign. And one of its unfortunate locations can be down there right in the front of the brain, down between the eyes. I've taken those things out. I actually took one out of a woman. It was so big, when I finished, I was looking out her nose. It eroded through the bone. But she recovered. And so I don't know. I'm not much on radiating non-malignant tumors. It just bothers me.
Mm-hmm. Well, Dr. Shealy, can you describe what the procedure might be like in a typical case of a meningioma for surgery?
Yeah, you go in and you can sort of gradually, it does not invade the brain, it may compress the brain. But you can actually push slightly between the tumor and the brain and unroot it, so to speak. You just clip off the blood vessel coming into it and take it out as a lump, as a ball.
Okay. Yeah. Let's talk about how you would go in when we come back. Where is the entry point? Norm Shealy. Class, Dr. Norman Shealy is with us, normshealy.com. And if you'd like to sign up for the same newsletter that I get multiple times per week, normshealy.com, normshealy.com. Page 1, you can sign up for the newsletter, and your email address does not get sold. It's only used by Dr. Shealy to get you your free newsletter. Dr. Shealy, we're talking about this tumor type, or this growth. Are we talking about an endonasal or endoscopic approach through the nose for this type of surgery? No? Not
in this case. Actually, you do have to start up above. You start with a cut. It's going to be approximately 6 or 7 inches long, and moving the scalp back and then boring holes. You have a motor that stops automatically when it goes through the bone. Mm-hmm. And so you do a hole, and then you saw in between those, and you take out a piece of the scalp. Mm-hmm. Then you open the covering of the brain, which is called the dura. It's like almost like a piece of sheepskin. And then you've got the brain in front of you. And we have special tools, spatulas of various kinds, that you can gently retract the brain itself and move down in front of the brain where this particular tuba is.
Dr. Shealy, can you talk about the risks associated with this type of a procedure?
Well, there's a risk always of a stroke-like thing, and it can happen because of interfering with blood supply. Obviously, because you're working down there between the nerves to the two eyes, you can cause blindness with the surgery, but statistically speaking, unless you're 90-plus years old, these tumors aren't going to go away on their own. And I would elect for surgery with an accomplished neurosurgeon. Mm-hmm. In general, I would want a minimum of 2, possibly 3, independent opinions from different neurosurgeons before I would say I go with radiation especially. Mm-hmm.
What about this MRI type of a treatment? It's kind of a new thing. Do you think that there's some viability in shrinking this tumor from that?
Well, anything is possible, but I'm not much into experimental treatments in the brain.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And now, radiation. What would you say the risks would be, and why would there be risks with radiation?
Well, radiation kills tissue. It absolutely kills the tissue,
Yes.
and you can't keep the radiation just in the tumor. It's all around the tumor. And so, again, the risk are stroke, the risk are blindness, and the ability to stop it completely from growing up pretty slim.
Mm-hmm. So, are you saying that it sounds like this type of a meningioma would just continue to grow?
Yeah. I mean, they could get huge.
Okay.
I mean, bigger than orange.
Wow. And what would be, okay, so the risks of doing nothing would be what, Dr. Shealy? In many cases. I'm not saying...
It's going to cause pressure on the brain. It's going to have pressure on the nerves to the eyes, pressure on the blood vessels to the brain. The risk of doing nothing is sooner or later it's going to cause serious trouble.
Okay. So is the plan then to have the surgery soon while it's at its smallest state that's available for surgery?
That's the way I look at it. Now, again, I certainly used to do this kind of surgery, and I would look very carefully at experienced neurosurgeons doing it.
Mm-hmm. Now, how would you identify an experienced neurosurgeon? What would the characteristics be? Length of time?
I would consider going to a major medical school. I mean, the top surgeons in the Department of Neurosurgery at a major medical school certainly worth consulting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Are you talking about Mayo, Johns Hopkins?
Yeah,
those kinds of names.
Yeah,
Harvard. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Those are the biggies.
Okay. Dr. Shealy, thank you for sharing that, and I'll pass the link to this broadcast on to those who need that information on the East Coast. I've been looking at this post about irregular work hours and how it affects people. Having irregular work hours and not having normal sunlight on a routine basis, working shift work, that kind of thing, really messes people up, from what I understand. Is that what you have found?
Absolutely. I've spent a lot of time studying the literature on this because one of our dear friends is a night owl. And just being a night owl in our society is dangerous to your health long term. The shift workers, those who work different shifts, can change by the week, by the month, are the most unhealthy of all. In other words, we need a minimum of 7 hours of sleep during the night hours to be healthy. 7 or 8 hours is optimal. Anything less, there's good evidence that someone who gets 6 hours of sleep, even during the night, but only 6 hours, functions at the level of a slightly drunk person.
Wow. And as you say that, the first thing that came to my mind is a truck driver. These guys who are on mega doses of caffeine, those sugary energy drinks, plus whatever else they might have taken to stay awake behind the wheel of these many ton moving projectiles. And it's kind of concerning to me that there are people that are doing things that we depend on and who could be in our way in terms of harming us, that are not really totally functioning at 100%. That is a concern. Of course, then what about the interns who are in medicine, who have been kept up 24 hours, 36 hours? What about them, Dr. Shealy? How is it possible for them to be operating at 100%? Is it possible?
Well, it's not possible. They obviously don't function optimally, and it's to me, now, we do have to have, at a hospital, the best part of medicine is emergency.
Mm-hmm.
An emergency doesn't happen only between in daylight. So we have to have ways of people who are willing to sacrifice their own health in order to cover the nighttime hours.
Mm-hmm. You know, I remember being at dinner with you at a restaurant with Dr. Sergey Sorin, and I wanted to ask him this question. He is your business partner in your clinic, and he's a wonderful man, and he's conscientious, he's devoted, he's just a wonderful, wonderful individual. And I was thinking about the stress that he must be under most of the time. And then I asked him the question across the dinner table, and that was about losing patients, you know, during that shift at the emergency room, because he's an emergency room doctor. And my question was, how many patients might be lost in the course of a shift? I was shocked, Dr. Shealy. I mean, for some reason, I thought it was rare. It's every day. Every day. Patients are lost in the emergency room. Every day. During a shift, during one shift. It's the probability, or my understanding is at least one is lost during a shift. That has got to be stressful beyond belief.
Yeah.
Dr. Shealy, how does one deal with that?
Personally, I would not choose to deal with that. It's just my own health and well-being are such that I couldn't do it. It takes a very special personality to be able to tolerate that.
Yeah. I've got to tell you that, what came to my mind as I was asking him about this was that losing the patient is one thing. That's horrible in itself. And then right after that, step number 2 is meeting the family and then saying, here's what just happened. I'm sorry. We lost him. That could be a gunfight. It could be, he could be shot. He could have tried to commit suicide. I mean, it could be something that there's no way you could save that person. I mean, however, the loss of life has got to have it seems to me like it would be an additive thing. Each time that this happens has to have a cumulative additive effect on that ER doctor. It has to.
Well,
and
I'm sure it does, and I don't know any scientific studies on that aspect of it, but you do have to learn a certain amount of detachment to survive in life, no matter where you are. Mm-hmm. There are people who are exquisitely hypersensitive to suffering by anyone or anything, and they should not get involved in a place where they have to see or experience it on an automatic basis. In the neurosurgical residency, we deal with a lot of trauma, head injuries of various kinds. I remember when I moved to La Crosse, Wisconsin, to Gunnison Clinic, on the weekend before I was to start on Monday, I got a call, can you come in? We have a 12-year-old girl who just had a silage fork stuck through her neck.
Oh.
And her brother had thrown it out of a silo, and it catapulted and it hit her in the neck. And I had to go in and clean up the wound, and it actually took just a couple of millimeters off the side of her spinal cord and cleaned it up. And that's an exciting neurosurgical approach. And
sure.
She recovered pretty well.
Wonderful.
Minimal neurologic. And that's the gratifying part of doing that kind of thing.
Yeah. Hold that thought. We'll be right back. Dr. Norman Shealy and I are talking about shift work, irregular work hours. And Dr. Shealy, my studying and research has led me to learn that it results in poor quality sperm, erectile dysfunction, irritability. And so who's involved in this kind of schedule or changing schedule? That'd be doctors and nurses and truck drivers and police and possibly firemen and others, and many others. And my understanding is that about 15% of us are involved in in this kind of irregular scheduling or shift work, and that it increases the risk of diabetes by 42%. 42% greater chance of having type 2 diabetes as a result of shift work. Dr. Shealy, we talked about sleep. Okay, so that's a big problem, the lack of sleep. But could it also be other contributing factors like not normal routine sunlight? If you work the night shift, you're sleeping during the day, probably not in the sun so you can sleep. Is that part of it as well?
Well, of course, that's an interesting one, Vince, because you, being a farmer, get outside a lot. I bet the average person, American, except maybe on vacation or special occasions, doesn't get outside in outside light on their body 5 or 10 minutes a day.
Yeah.
We live in caves.
Right. Well, I in the summer, over the years and as recently as last summer, I remember my mom looking at me saying, "Wow, I remember when you were white." because I'm out there in the sun. Now I don't intentionally sunbathe. I try not to get sunburn. I take precautions. I try to use a tractor cab, but I do want to get some sunlight.
Well, I totally agree. And I'm one of those people who, on a weekend especially, may go out and truly sunbathe. I live in a fairly secluded farm area, and I go out behind my house and lie down on a big towel and be totally exposed to my whole body. I love basking in the sun.
And we have a veranda right outside our kitchen, and I sometimes I will take my shirt off and roll up my blue jeans, to expose my legs, and I will get a little extra sun if I feel that I need it. I'll just go do that, and and it's kind of nice living in the middle of nowhere, isn't it, Dr. Shealy?
And exposure to sunlight is another of the natural ways of keeping that most important hormone, DHEA, up.
Yes.
People get an hour outside, and that's even, either closed, but an hour outside in the sun have higher levels of DHEA than those who are cabin dwellers, so to speak.
And on this line of thinking, Dr. Shealy, keeping busy, and, we've talked about this for years, use it or lose it, muscle tone, memory, and you taught me something that I've taught our children, and that is you can tell your body to know what time it is, and I can literally wake up just a couple minutes before, I have the alarm set just as a plan B backup, but in the mornings. But I wake up, I know what time it is, and when I wake up at night, I also know what time it is. Within just a couple minutes, maybe at the most, I could be 15 minutes off. So if I wake up and I haven't opened my eyes yet, I know what time it is. And then I can look at the clock, and I'm within, a few minutes. I know what time it is, and you can train your body to do that. But the point is, if we don't use it, will we lose it? And I believe the answer is yes. And can we talk about that when we come back? And the using it, keeping busy to fight off Alzheimer's disease. We talk about that. What do we need to do? Because it seems like Alzheimer's is attacking every family. What do you think, Dr. Shealy?
You bet. We'll talk about it.
Okay. All right. And then male mutilation, circumcision. Is that male mutilation? Let's talk about that too when we come back. Dr. Norm Shealy, normshealy.com. I'm Vincent Finelli. Everyone all set? Cocked, locked, blissed. Hour number 2 of USA Prepares with Dr. Norm Shealy, medical doctor. Dr. Shealy, I was just looking at a post during the break. It's from the telegraph.co.uk, and it says, beauty sleep is real. Too little sleep leaves you less attractive, this study finds. And there are some volunteers that were involved in this. And so what they did was they restricted some of the sleep and they took some pictures, and they said, what do you think in these pictures? And what happened is it looks like those who were looking at the images of people who were tired found them to be less desirable, less sociable, and that maybe they even constitute a risk because they're not running at 100%. So we can sense subtle differences in people who have not had enough sleep, and possibly even detect that they're not as healthy. And I'm sure as a medical doctor, you have some thoughts on what you see when you think people don't get enough sleep.
Well, of course. The biggest thing is, I think it confuses the mind. In other words, focused, clear thinking is affected also by inadequate sleep. So it's every aspect of the body and mind and personality that are dependent upon adequate sleep. And adequate sleep is 7 or 8 hours of quality sleep.
And how does, at night, and how does eating before going to sleep affect sleep? Is it negative?
Yes.
So okay,
a
it is
minimum
negative.
of 2 and preferably 3 hours after a major meal before going to sleep. Now, I go out of my way to try to have dinner not later than 6:30 because I'm going to be in bed by 9 o'clock. And so I get 2.5 hours, but I don't need that big a meal. I mean, if it was a huge meal, I'd want to do it at 5 o'clock.
Okay, and why is that, Dr. Shealy, that eating just before bedtime is bad? Does it put weight on? Does it tax your digestive system when your body should be rebuilding? What actually is going on that is negative?
Well, the digestive system is a very active part of metabolism. I mean, it's a huge 1 to 3 hour event after a meal, and so it interferes with the normal. The brain is not active thinking-wise to go to sleep, but it's being distracted by all that extra metabolism taking place in the abdomen.
So your body is really not at rest.
It's not at rest.
And
there are all
needs
kinds
it
of
absolutely
things that affect that. For instance, hot soaks. Soaking in a hot water is a wonderful relaxation tool, but it shouldn't be done within 3 hours of going to bed.
Okay. I wanted to ask you, just as a slight diversion, I've experimented with the shower head on our shower, and it's this high pressure, if you will, low volume, and it atomizes the water. But if I take off this little tiny shower head, a little stream of water, the diameter of one of those straws that you would use to stir a cup of coffee that you might get at a restaurant, or a to-go kind of cup of coffee where you'd stir in the additives that you might, like milk or something, or whatever you might put in your coffee. So it's a very thin stream. So I take off the shower head and I blast my head in it, and I use that to invigorate my skin, kind of like a mini whirlpool of maybe 1 inch in diameter. And I'll aim that at my hair, and then I'll go around my neck, around the back of my neck, because whether you're in a whirlpool or shower, it's really hard to get the skin around your neck. What would you call it? Exposed to the whirlpool. I mean, it's really hard to do that. And I think that my circulation, because it's and I get my lungs and my back, so I kind of hose myself off, if you will, in the shower by this high pressure thin stream of water now. Do you think that that's a beneficial thing? Because when I'm done, my skin is kind of red. I mean, not bleeding, but I can see that I brought blood to the surface or increased my circulation. Is that a good thing or a bad thing, Dr. Shealy?
I think it's healthy.
Okay.
Anything that increases circulation within a normal range is good for you.
Okay. Well, that's what I've been doing, class. And so I take the shower head off every day, and I, the area of my carotid artery, I blast that too gently. And I'm wondering if that's a good thing. Is there any risk in doing damage?
No, I definitely would not think so.
Okay. All right. So keeping busy to fight off Alzheimer's. We were talking as we went out of hour number one, the last segment. Keeping busy to fight off Alzheimer's. Reading, exercise, gardening, going out and about, whether it be shopping, going to the grocery store, movement rather than or as compared to just vegetating in front of the television and nodding off. Actual physical movement, brain activity that, requires thinking, adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, reading, writing, all the things that you might do to expand a knowledge base. Would you say that it's worth doing to fight off Alzheimer's?
Well, it's worth doing for many reasons. First of all, it keeps your mind functioning. Mm-hmm. Secondly, it certainly helps to prevent Alzheimer's. One of the most interesting studies many years ago was of nuns, and what percentage of nuns developed Alzheimer's. And they went back to the essays that these young women had written when they were 15, 16 or younger, entering the nunnery. And those nuns who wrote sort of simple essays with not much elaboration, weren't mentally that elaborate, had a much higher incidence of Alzheimer's just because of their own mental activity, even at a young age. Mm-hmm. So, use it or lose it is indeed a very important part of preventing Alzheimer's. Now, we obviously need adequate vitamins and adequate nutrition, and we need adequate physical activity as well. But, keeping the mind busy. And let me tell you my thought about television. I think it's other than dumb phones, I think it's the next worst invention of the last century. I'm
listening intently as you say that, and I've got to agree with so much of what you've just said, because it really puts us in almost a comatose state. And I've said to my classes when I was teaching in Virginia that if you ask someone who has just watched a typical moronic television program what they just saw and what the plot was, they'd be hard pressed to tell you what it was about.
Well, that's right. I just don't find it worth my time even to think about what might be on television. Mm-hmm. I don't watch it. I don't find anything redeeming about it. I'm not saying that there aren't occasionally good, informative programs. They must be, I suppose, but I don't see them because I don't watch television.
I remember being in Sam's Club, and every once in a while they'll have this guy or these two guys standing at a table, and as you approach them, they'll say, "Have you heard about our latest special?" I go, No. And they'll say, "Well, 270 channels. We've got 270 channels." And then I put on my best Columbo, and I say, "Do they have commercials?" Well, yeah. So during an hour, what amount of that hour is commercials? Is it like 20 minutes? They'll say, well, yeah, maybe a little more. Okay. So 38 minutes of 270 channels per hour, and you have to pay for this, right? Yeah. And so my next question is, so of those 270 channels, of which there's 38 minutes per hour of programming, or non-programming. The programming would be the commercials. How many of those channels are worth watching? And you know what? They're very hard pressed, because if you look at anybody with a remote in his or her hand, they're looking for something to watch out of those 270 channels that they're paying for, and they can't find it because it's not there.
to me, reading is infinitely better for your brain.
Yep. And I think my take on that, Dr. Shealy, is your mind has to invent the pictures or recall pieces of pictures or pieces of images based on past experiences as to what those words on the page mean. So not only are your eyes moving, but your brain is busy, engaged, making the images, the connections, connecting the dots, thinking about the things that have happened in the past while you're reading, all simultaneously going on. And it's an exercise of the brain that I think is absolutely worth doing.
I agree, totally.
At the same point, Dr. Shealy, John Regan and I were talking on Monday about something that I think is horrible. And that is in California at a university, they have destroyed books. Libraries are now in the business of book destruction. They are making room in libraries so that people can meet and take naps. So clear out the books so we can take naps. Clear out the books so we can have discussions.
What a dormitory for.
Well, I was kind of thinking, when the libraries were first set up, did anybody say, you know what, look, tell you what, let's build it a little bit bigger, let's have a nap room over there, and let's have a meeting room over here? They didn't do that. Dr. Shealy, they had room for studying and reading and books and a librarian to help you find what you needed if you didn't know. That's what libraries are for. Dr. Norman Shealy's with us. And Dr. Shealy, circumcision, is that male mutilation? And here's a quote from 30 years ago, June 22nd, 1987, Dr. Thomas Wiswell. He says, I have some good friends who are obstetricians outside the military, and they look at foreskin and almost see a $125 price tag on it. Each one is that much money. Heck, this is still the quote. Heck, if you do 10 a week, that's over $1,000 a week, and they don't take much time. Another quote, anonymous quote, is, if you want to see what motivates a doctor to circumcise perfectly healthy boys, just look in his driveway. And I just did a quick search on what the cost of male circumcision is. And it says circumcision in an older child or adult is typically between $800 and $3,000. For children 1 to 17 years old, they call it gentle circumcision. It's $850. So it's not free. What are your thoughts on male circumcision? Is it mutilation or is it necessary?
Well, it's not a question necessarily of being necessary, but there are certain advantages of it. First of all, it decreases the risk of certain types of venereal disease. It decreases the risk of cancer of the penis. There is a situation sometimes in which the foreskin gets sort of frozen. It cannot be retracted. That it requires a circumcision. The basic problem, I think, if it's going to be done as a routine, it should be done while the baby is, a day old or so, not weeks and years old. The major difference is there are cultures where they do it and cultures where they don't, but the incidence of problems with the penis itself is greater in those where there's not circumcision. Now, it's not that huge a problem normal, under average circumstances, but it does. I'm not opposed to circumcision. Both of my boys were circumcised in a hospital.
Mm-hmm. When they were young?
Yes. Oh, when they were born.
Just born? Yeah. And I remember discussing this when our boys were born, and I said, is this painful? And the answer was the same both times I asked the question for each boy. They won't remember it. The answer was,
well, I'm sure it's painful,
they didn't say, are you kidding? There's going to be blood spurting everywhere, and these boys are going to scream out like you've never heard before, because, I believe it's done without anesthesia, right?
Right.
Or anesthetics. Yeah.
Yes.
And, it's really, really painful, but no one remembers it. That was the response. And my thought was, wow, so this newborn just went through an unbelievable experience, okay? Being perfectly happy and healthy inside his mom. Now he's exposed to the air and everything's different, everything's new, and now we're going to cut off his skin.
Well, Vince,
And that was...
I'll tell you something personal. I don't think I've ever discussed this publicly. But when I was a freshman in medical school, 19 years of age, I began to have irritation of the glans penis. And I needed a circumcision at that age. Now that, done with local anesthetic, was not that painful. So I'm one of those who apparently didn't retract the foreskin enough to keep it from becoming irritated. I don't know. All I know is I needed it to just be healthy. And so...
Well, see, I can understand that.
I've never I've never had a second thought about it, never had been worried about it or concerned about it.
And my question was, so it's not mutilation?
I don't consider it mutilation, no.
Yeah. Now, there are some states that will not pay for, under Medicaid, for circumcision. What are they? California, North Dakota, Oregon, Nevada, Washington, Mississippi, Missouri, Arizona, North Carolina, Montana, Utah, Florida, Maine, Louisiana, Idaho, Minnesota, South Carolina, and Colorado. We'll be right back. They will not pay under Medicaid. Dr. Norman Shealy is with us, class. If you'd like to get the same newsletter I get multiple times per week, go to normshealy.com, NORMSHEALY.com. And if you'd like to go to his website and peruse some of the items that you can buy, like magnesium lotion and Dr. Shealy's Youth Formula, which I take both of them every day, normshealy.com. If you'd like to call his office and set up an appointment to chat with Dr. Shealy or visit him in person in Springfield, Missouri, 417-351-5221. 417-351-5221. And he is in partnership with Dr. Sergey Sorin, ER doctor, and another fabulous medical doctor. So you have a chance to see one or both. A great experience. I think you'll find it as delightful as I do. Dr. Shealy, sauerkraut as a probiotic, and what I've learned through some of my research is sauerkraut is a very, very effective probiotic. One of the most, if not the most, right?
That is true. If it's homemade.
Yes.
If it's been pasteurized and in a can, of course, you've killed all the biotic stuff. So it's yes, homegrown. I have made kraut. I've made sauerkraut out of kale. I've made it out. Any of that family can be made into kraut, and it tastes good.
How do you make sauerkraut, Dr. Shealy, out of, let's say, cabbage? If you wanted to make a traditional sauerkraut.
Okay, I fill a quart jar with chopped up cabbage or any of the greens, and I put a half a teaspoon of salt in and a little bit of water, maybe half of the upside, and then I cover it with those old zinc lids. They have a red rubber inside and a ceramic top, and then a zinc outer cover.
Right.
And I just leave it in the basement and go down a couple times a week and tighten up the lid a little bit. It takes about 4 to 6 weeks to make the kraut.
And is there any risk that it could go bad and you could, do harm to yourself? Is there anything that you need to look at to say, this isn't working?
You could obviously have fungus grow in it and that sort of thing. I've never had one go bad, but I'm very careful about watching it to be sure that it's not no fungus-looking stuff is growing in it.
Okay. Any precautions that you take? Obviously, you clean the containers very well prior to starting.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you wash them thoroughly with very hot water and rinse thoroughly.
Mm-hmm. And all you do is add a half a teaspoon of salt. Is that what you said, half a teaspoon?
Yeah, of salt.
Okay. And would that be regular table salt, iodized, non-iodized, sea salt?
I only use Himalayan salt.
Himalayan, okay.
And the reason I use Himalayan is it has 3% of trace minerals in it. So it's got not only some iodine and stuff, but it's got all kinds of other minor trace minerals.
Okay. Okay, so sauerkraut is our homemade sauerkraut is our number one probiotic. And how much should we consume and how often, Dr. Shealy?
Well, if you don't have any digestive problems, once or twice a week is great. If you've got digestive products, you need something every day. Most people are not going to eat kraut every day, so that's where I would use, I would make my own kefir or what's called kombucha tea. Those are other probiotics that are actually quite simple to make. Once you get your culture of kefir, for instance, I make that in a 2-quart jar, and I leave about a cup to a cup and a half of the original stuff in the jar, fill it with whole milk, shake it up, cover it with a piece of cloth and a rubber band so bugs can't get in, and just sit it at room temperature for 24 hours. And it makes into this stuff which my grandmother would have called clabbered milk.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, Dr. Shealy, if one of us were to buy a can of sauerkraut, you pick up at the grocery store or supermarket, would that be considered a probiotic in this line of thinking, or no? Because it's been
that is definitely
preserved.
no prior. Pasteurization kills every organism, including the probiotics.
Okay. So having sauerkraut would not have anywhere near the benefit out of a can as homemade.
Exactly.
Okay.
Now, and sometimes in the grocery store, you can find it in a plastic bag in the refrigerated part of the produce department. Now, that will be real sauerkraut.
Okay. So that would you say that's close to being equivalent to homemade?
Yes.
Okay. So we have to get it in the bag, refrigerated. And does it say anything on it? Would it say pasteurized or would it say not pasteurized? Would it say anything to indicate that, yes, that is the one we want?
I think no, I don't think that I think they sometimes call it homemade or something like that. But I don't remember them mentioning pasteurization. But that could vary.
Okay. Dr. Shealy, I've gotten on this kick where I've been making Italian beef. And what it is I'll buy a very large chuck roast, and I'll slice off the fat, and I'll add some pepperoncini, which are Italian pickled peppers, and some other spices. And I've given out the recipe. I'll post it on our website maybe sometime this week for Italian beef. And the reason I'm mentioning this is I've been looking for pepperoncini. I can't find them in Springfield, Missouri. I went to a small grocery store or supermarket, a small one, and I asked them if they would order pepperoncini for me, and they said they could, but they would have to order a case. So it's 4 gallons in this case, and I said, that sounds great, love it, appreciate you ordering that for me. So they're ordering these, and so here's my question. By eating pickled peppers and pickles, does that harm our body? Can we eat too many of them? Does the preservatives in pickles damage our digestive system? Is there a concern?
Think so. Now, I haven't looked it up scientifically, but I would guess that in general, I think the pickled stuff is good for digestion. Okay.
And one of the questions I have for you, and I asked one of our farmer friends, I had these, as a result of the steroids I'm on, I get these cramps. I get Charlie horses, and they're almost crippling at times where my leg doesn't want to move and my muscles get all twisted up. My fingers, I can't use my fingers at all times because I believe it's related to these steroids. And so I mentioned this to one of my farmer friends. He goes, just drink some pickle juice. It'll fix you right up. And I thought, really? So I went to the refrigerator, and I didn't do exactly that, but I got several tablespoons of pickles, sliced pickles, and I ate them. And do you know, it seemed like the cramps in the Charlie horses went away. Is there something that you would recommend for Charlie horses and
Well, I
cramps?
have, in general, I recommend magnesium lotion for Charlie horses.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what would be in the pickles that would help, but it could be some trace mineral.
Okay. Well, what I've done, I have magnesium spray and magnesium lotion, and I do that. And you're right, it absolutely works. I apply it right on that spot, and within, I don't know, a couple minutes, I'm okay. But so I was just wondering if there's something going on with pickles, or if there's anything else that you recommend. Is it a hydration issue? Because I drink plenty of fluids.
I think it's probably a slight disturbance in sodium, potassium, and magnesium from the steroids.
Okay. So I need to just make sure that I take plenty of multivitamins, correct?
Well, and you know, interestingly, the medical profession's had it all wrong about salt for the last 50-plus years. Mm-hmm. Some salt is necessary, and so there's no evidence that up to 1/2 teaspoon of salt a day is harmful, even to people with hypertension. Now, since I don't buy foods that are already preserved and packaged with salt in them, I have to add salt to my daily food in order to get adequate salt. And of course, if you have high blood pressure, then over 1/2 teaspoon can be harmful. But actually, 3/4 of a teaspoon in someone who does not have hypertension is not harmful.
So that begs the question about canned vegetables. If we have canned vegetables, let's say canned string beans, let's say we do that. When I open that can, Dr. Shealy, first of all, I wash the top of the can and, under the sink, and I rinse it off to make sure that anything that might have fallen on my can, I remove that I can. And then I will use filtered water. First, I'll pour off the liquid in the can, and then I will add filtered water to the can, and then I will pour that off several times to remove some of the, what I would consider excess salt. Is that something that you would recommend or not recommend? Because it seems to me that any canned food is way oversalted for my taste.
Well, that's probably true. We don't know how much, really. You'd have to figure it out with a computer almost to decide whether it's worth having or not. The difference is that I can my own vegetables in jars, but I honestly don't guess I would eat a can of canned, store-bought canned vegetables a week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I see them in the cupboard, and I keep seeing the same cans. They seem to stay there.
Yeah.
For maybe emergencies. When we come back, can we talk about a couple things? One, B complex for hangovers, 3 meals a day versus grazing, nibbling on snacks, prepackaged snacks versus 3 meals a day, and apple cider vinegar. NormShealy.com. We'll be right back. But just as a quick update, if a intercontinental ballistic missile were launched from North Korea, it would take 10 to 11 minutes to get to Tokyo. It would take 30 to 34 minutes to get to San Francisco, and it would take 30 to 39 minutes to get to Washington, D.C. That's 10 to 11 minutes Tokyo, 30 to 34 minutes San Francisco, 30 to 39 minutes Washington, D.C. I just wanted to make sure that you're aware of that, because that is a possibility. I'm not saying that it's going to happen. I'm just saying that it's something that I just read, and I wanted to share that. Dr. Shealy, vitamin B complex for hangovers. What are your thoughts about, if a person goes out and celebrates maybe a little too much, lots of water just before bed and vitamin B complex?
Definitely. 100 milligrams. Mm-hmm. B1, B2, B3, B6.
Okay. And what would the result be? Almost no hangover in the morning?
For most people. Now, obviously, everything is relative, and there are degrees of excess. So, you could kill yourself if you drink enough alcohol. So I would say an ordinary, just ordinary hangover, whatever it takes to make you feel hungover, 100 milligrams of B complex is definitely worth considering automatically.
Okay. Before bedtime, right?
Preferably.
Okay. Yeah. And then, Dr. Shealy, there's this new trend, people who are might consider themselves overworked or at least overstressed at the job, and they're snacking, and maybe their digestive system's in turmoil from pressure from the boss, and so they nibble all day long. I guess the new term for nibbling is grazing. And how does that compare to 3 meals a day, which I try to do?
I think it's unhealthy. You know, again, as we talked about in relation to sleep at night, digestion of a meal takes a lot of focus of the entire nervous system. And so for the average person, either 2 or 3 real meals a day is the best way to eat.
Dr. Shealy, we've gotten away from that. We really have, because I remember back, when I was dating Mrs. Finelli. Her mother was a fabulous cook. She was a dietitian in one of her jobs, if you will. And so, everything was there. All the food groups were there, and a lot of cooking from scratch. Today, it's open the freezer, pull out the box, take out the inner plastic bag, rip it open, put it on a plate, put it in the microwave oven. That's dinner.
Well, not in my house. I don't even have a microwave oven.
What I'm saying is we've gotten away from preparing meals with vegetables, nuts, salad, sometimes dessert. Dessert was not big at my house. We hardly ever had dessert. Sweet things just weren't around in my house. But I think we've gotten away from cooking meals because mom's working. Mom's working, exhausted when she comes home, and in a lot of households, if there is a household, to the point where the meals are suffering, the children are suffering, and obviously the results are obvious. Just look around. Everybody's getting heavier and wider and more lethargic and less productive. But it seems that there is a correlation there with a lack of good meals.
Well, it's also part of the brainwashing that is done with television. People don't think, they react. And, you can train animals by repetition, and I think when you see this junk that I think goes on television, that's going to ruin your appetite, it's going to ruin your habit.
Very good point. Apple cider vinegar in the last few seconds with mother, apple cider vinegar with mother. What are your thoughts?
Good. A couple of teaspoons a day, excellent.
And what about keeping your body alkaline? Is that a problem if you take apple cider vinegar?
Not at all.
Very good. Very good. Class, that's 2 hours with Dr. Norman Shealy every Wednesday right here on usaprepares.com. And if you'd like to contact him, normshealy.com is the website. Norm@normshealy.com is his email address. Dr. Shealy, thanks so much. See you next week.
Good.